Hello there. I've kind of talked endlessly about spiritual polarization. This is why there's no inner conflict in the persona of a common fool. Everything is homogeneous. Yeah, there's no internal struggle. The fool sleeps really well at night, and there is no internal struggle. Everybody that actually becomes wiser, since there are two selves, and every branch of metaphysics, Greek, Indian, and Egyptian, speaks of two selves, the transcendent self and the immanent self, i.e. the psychophysical self. There's spiritual polarization. This is why the, quote, holy, even Christianity actually has this, the, quote, holy people who have actually come to whatever sense of realization are polarized. They're kind of have a great internal struggle. Life becomes more miserable because there is clear delineation due to spiritual polarization between the terrestrial self and the transcendent self. I don't care what anybody thinks or believes, but there is examples of this within the Bible and within the Nikayas, where Gautama is tempted by Mara. Mara is just the ancient Pali word for the great evil, the same way that old Jesus was tempted in the desert by the great evil one. If you think that was actually a separate entity, and it kind of is a separate entity. Jesus was tempted in the desert by the great evil. But it's not actually separate. It is separate, and yet that is, of course, the psychophysical self, flesh and blood, and desires and impulses and beliefs and whatnot. And that, of course, is always the enemy. But it's not the enemy of a common fool. This is why common fools are happy-go-lucky people with no internal struggle. But there's no actual distinction. If you're pointing at a psychophysical person, within that there's two individuals. One is coordinate, and the other one, of course, is transcendent. That would be the same delineation talking about the transcendent or the divine being the signal, which, of course, is not in the radio, and the broadcast, which would be analogous to consciousness, and, of course, is the consubstantiality of the signal, and, of course, of the radio. Evil is the great tempter. Why people that are spiritually polarized, and this video is about the EVIL, and everybody wants me to talk about it. I'm only interested in the logical metaphysics thereof. It's logical, rational, and sensible. Kind of a near-perfect analogy in everything in nature is extremely simple. If you take a piece of iron, not that this is an iron or a magnet, take a piece of iron and you get a magnet near it. It doesn't matter if it's the North Pole or the South Pole. It will be induced by manner of field to accelerate towards the magnet. Yeah, it doesn't matter which pole it is. Evil, in the case of a polarized person, as a polarized person, has a tough life because they are spiritually polarized. Evil being of one pole only, not that a magnet can have a monopole, but it being of one nature. Whether it's evil or demonic, it actually cannot get a polarized person who has a certain level of wisdom to actually fall in league with that, because they are polarized. So, of the unfortunate nature of people that are polarized, have spiritual polarization due to wisdom, and they're separating themselves out from the terrestrial self, they cannot be tempted unless it is incredibly strong and they have very little wisdom, cannot be tempted by evil. It's kind of ironic that nobody talks about this, but you should always do and believe and follow the opposite of whatever evil says. It is the truth that you can actually always set your watch, literally, almost set your watch by what evil people do and say and command. In which case, if you identify them as evil and you have wisdom and you're immune, to their wares and their temptations, you can actually listen to them and just read in the opposite of everything they impel and command and try to get you to do or believe. And it's like, well, this is the truth. It's the opposite of everything this evil or demonic entity says. One thing that actually defines them, and I hear almost nobody talking about this, is the metaphysics behind evil, and those that actually cling to evil and those who are actually demonic, is that they are cowards. They are absolutely cowards. I'd like to talk about that here in a second. And evil will always find the worst of you and it will both feed off of it and use that to deplete that which you are spiritually, so that you'll try to fall in league with it. There's a reason why evil is called legion. Of the good metaphysics that's within the good book, as the Christians would call it, that is certainly one of them. It is legion, for it is many. And many, of course, requires the many, just as keeping a fire alive requires the heaping of more and more and more firewood. It is not self-sustaining. There's no fire that's self-sustaining. There is a light that is self-sustaining, but that's the light of the good of the one, not the fire which gives warmth, just as the light of the one gives warmth and manner by means of wisdom. But this warmth is temporal, ephemeral, and it is always, of course, self-consuming. I have a couple wood-burning stoves, and it's amazing. You stick a gigantic pile of wood in there, and after a few hours, just tiny little scraps of ashes in the bottom. And of course, evil is exactly like this. So you can set your clock by the statements of evil men and beings. Something else that I pointed out before, but not recently, and that is the most evil people in this world are highly intelligent. Ignorant people and unwise people are not that dangerous. They can actually do evil deeds, might have slightly evil minds, but they're not that dangerous. People that are capable of great evil, and this is one of the things that actually defines the demonic, is that they're extremely intelligent, but unwise. And unfortunately, there's no delineation in Western society at the level of a school or college that ever talks about this fact. You know, there is the unwise and unintelligent. There's the wise and unintelligent, and then there's the intelligent and unwise. There's essentially 4 different types of people in that class, but the most evil people are always incredibly intelligent and extremely unwise, and these are always the most dangerous. Once again, evil is like a raging fire, dangerous and ominous, but you can either do one of 2 things, because one of 2 things will happen, and this always occurs in cycles of the world, but how quickly you want to end it. I mean, the evil might last for a seeming eternity, but it will certainly outlast you if it's allowed to persist. You could either, just like water, you know, just like a roaring bonfire, seems so ominous and evil, but you can either let it burn itself out, which it always will burn itself out, but it might take several lifetimes for it to burn itself out, unfortunately. Or you could douse it with water. It's the water of resistance and wisdom, and it always shrinks. Have you ever noticed the most evil entities on earth all throughout history have always themselves been sniveling little cowards, and what they do is they get people to stand behind standards and symbols and talismans, but they themselves could never, of their own will. This is the reason, like a giant fire, you need to keep heaping wood on it. Evil is not self-sustaining like the good of the one. You only need one thing that shines the light of the one clearly through it, one person. Evil requires, once again, we get the term legion, and that is metaphysically accurate. Requires the heaping of a lot, and it wants to consume everything, but it also too necessitatively consumes itself. So you could either douse it with the water of resistance and wisdom, or you can let it burn itself out. But depending on how big that roaring fire is and how many collective fools are within the legion, it might take several lifetimes. You won't be around to see it burn itself out. Kind of like some roaring fires I've had going on in the fireplace. Like, man, I woke up in the middle of the night once, and it was really cold outside, even snow outside. And I put a few logs in the fire, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and I didn't wake up due to heat, but it was 94 degrees inside the cabin. It's not taught to you or by anybody. It's not even taught in Sunday school or any of these places where the religious blather goes on, much less in high school or college, that any desire for power outside of self-proximity, i.e. wisdom, which is the only true power, and it is self-sustaining, and the reason why it's self-sustaining is because it's directed towards rest. Human beings are always extremely confused when they think of power and energy. They're actually thinking in the burning. People think, like, not that this is a real fire, of course, that, a roaring fire is power and energy. It's not. It's a dissipation of energy. You're just seeing loss of energy, potency, of potential, and it's, of course, burning itself out. And any desire for power outside of wisdom, i.e. self-proximity, is a a gigantic warning sign of evil. And the fact that human beings don't recognize that, you know, is absolutely a huge facepalm to me. The Pythagoreans had an answer to that, where you took the wisest of the wise, and they themselves elected somebody to be a temporary leader who they considered the wisest among them. And the person didn't want the damn job. No, I don't want the job. I don't want it. No, 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 you need it, you know, for the sake of everybody else. Yet, unfortunately, by the way, the United States is a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Now that I'm on that discussion, not that I'm interested in ever discussing politics, I'm really not. All these people that are clamoring for power, why do you think they spend countless millions of dollars to get elected to, say, a $200,000 a year job? You know, I think that's the question that answers itself. But any of these people that want power, they're evil. They are evil. They should never be given that which they want. Any desire for power is itself evil. Evil is full of itself both literally and figuratively, and wisdom, of course, is the divine and full of rest in the one, and that's bottomless. Evil is always self-consuming, and it knows fundamentally at an unconscious level that it is self-consuming. That's why it always wants more bodies heaped upon it. It's like a sentient fire always, and by the way, the ancient Sannyasins of the Vedas and the Upanishads would actually burn fires and sit there and think upon the nature of fire, and how, you know, it's only going to burn for so long. You got to throw another log on the fire. It is always demanding another sacrifice. It can never be fulfilled because its power and its outreach requires heaping more upon it. It can never, it's a bottomless pit. It's absolutely bottomless. There's two types of bottomless, one that perpetually has to be fed, and one that's bottomless rest. The rest of the one, or the light of the one, or the divine. Take your pick. Doesn't make any difference if someone says God or not. I couldn't care less what people think or believe. Evil, I said iwi. Evil always wants to consume you and others, of course, in the fires of its own ignorance. All of these things, fundamentally from the standpoint of metaphysics, are only differentiated by humans, but they're one and the same thing. Envy, hatred, power-seeking, sophistry, to blaspheme anything against the beautiful or the divine. Anything that is inherently beautiful and in proportionality or logos with the one, even though it only be temporary. To blaspheme, and I don't mean the Judeo-Christian idea of blaspheming, to blaspheme against natural order, metaphysical blasphemy, to blaspheme against anything that's beautiful and in ratio and logos of natural order is itself evil. Hatred towards evil, hiding facts and truth. There's been a whole lot of this type of evil going on these past few years, as you very well know. Censorship. Anybody that wants to shut people up, they don't want the truth to get out. They're actually allergic to. This is what defines evil people. They want power, they want censorship, they want power over others. It's just like a sentient fire that wants more logs to be heaped higher, higher, higher. What's that? I forget, some line in a movie or something. Higher and higher and higher. They want more and more logs. Higher, higher, hotter, hotter, bigger, hotter, fat, you know. It's a bottomless pit. It's a type of self-sacrifice. There's two different types of self-sacrifice. There's one where you actually sacrifice the psychophysical for the transcendent, and this is where J.R.R. Tolkien, I'm no fan of The Lord of the Rings, really, not, by the way. This is where he actually got the idea from the Kalevala. I don't know if you're familiar with the ancient mystical text, the Kalevala. The idea of taking the beautiful ring that everybody's addicted to, and, you know, sitting, pitting the ring, you know, my precious, you know, that. They're addicted to this thing that is evil, but it is a logos of evil. There is an evil logos, and that, of course, is of matter and desire and envy and attachment. And the ultimate is to throw that beautiful thing back into the fires of the uncreate. But that's a different type of hatred towards beauty. It is a desire towards phenomena. The fundamental axis mundi of all true metaphysics is that there are two lights and there are two darknesses, but I've talked about this before. I don't really want to go over that in this video. Anyway, blasphemy against anything is beautiful, hatred towards what is beautiful or natural order, hiding facts and truths, censorship, once again, trying to convert people. Trying to convert people is no different than begging more logs to be thrown on the fire. Collectivism, socialism. There's only ever been two moves throughout the world, too. One towards collectivism, another one towards individuality. Um, Evil always hides in the mirage of belief systems and false identity. Um, Collectivism, by the way, there's no such thing as a collective wisdom. It's completely impossible and antithetical. That's like talking about dehydrated water to talk about collective wisdom. Evil, of course, is there's evil deeds, and that which is demonic. You can make several videos about that which is demonic. I may, if people really want it. Evil, of course, is ignorance of the good. I mean, your common fool that doesn't have an evil, fundamental evil forethought in his head, has ignorance of the good. This is just terrestrial ignorance, just as children will do something, or teenagers do something evil, where they just have ignorance of the good, such that they're worldly creatures, no different than a typical creature that doesn't have any forethought, really, or never does. Evil deeds, acts against the good of the one, either willful and or intentionally. That which is demonic is another flavor. This is to know the difference, but to worship evil. This is the nesting of one's soul in acts and will against natural order, the logos, the agathon, against the demiurge, and willful worship of phenomena as darkness. This is, of course, the confusion, which, of course, is the nature of evil, just as the most evil people are highly intelligent, yet unwise. Confuses the nature of the two lights and the two darknesses, i.e. the darkness of the God of the one. This is, of course, the higher darkness, i.e. the unmanifest, which is rest. You can't get people, because true energy, true power is actual rest. And it is impossible, really, truly impossible to get somebody to ideate what rest looks like. And they can't ideate it because it doesn't have any phenomenal, substantial footprint. They really can't wrap their brains around rest. That's the higher darkness, no Cartesian value. This is the ultimate one, or the darkness of God, which is actually the name of a few different books. Some ancient Christian metaphysical texts, by the way, also talk about the darkness of the one. This is not to be confused with the dark light, which is what evil does, since evil is ignorant. The dark light of phenomena, shapes, and then we'll actually attack it, which superficially has a super thin slice of wisdom in it, and that they are going after that which contains the imprint, the signet imprint, or the logos of the one or the divine. Say, look, it's purely temporal and phenomenal. I can destroy it. Look, now it's ugly. What once was beautiful is ugly. This means there's therefore nothing beautiful because it's so easily destroyed, so fragile, but that just belies the ignorance, the spiritual, metaphysical ignorance that evil and that which is demonic embraces. Demonic and evil always wishes to destroy that which is beautiful. I mean, it can manifest as envy and hatred, or to blaspheme against that which is beautiful. I used to have this super red, beautiful hot rod, this little BMW Z4. I had to always park it far away from all the other cars. I mean, it had scratches over, but it was like extremely beautiful car, and people will manifest envy, and they keyed the hell out of that sucker. I mean, they keyed that car more in 1 year than all my cars combined in my entire lifetime. Just because it was beautiful. It's like they knew it was beautiful, but they hated it because they didn't own it and it wasn't theirs, and the evil within them, they're like, I'm going to key that thing. It's not my car. I'd like to have it. It sure is beautiful. I'm going to make it less beautiful. There's a thing you could look up, like if you like have, and I've never had a really valuable car, even that was super beautiful car, where evil people will actually find like super expensive or super beautiful cars, and they'll either slit the tires on them or key the heck out of it, like, it's not my car, I wish it was, it's beautiful, I'm gonna make it less beautiful. This is fundamentally an act of evil. That's something that somebody could relate to, by the way. I hope you can anyway. So that's the distinction between evil deeds, and demonic. Evil creates standards and talismans and begs and fearmongers others to get behind the standard, be it flags or symbols, as you very well know. All throughout history there have been flags and symbols, great standards. We don't kind of say that in English anymore. They're talismans, though, but they used to be called standards. You know, a flag is a standard, a brass statue, you know, all sorts of idolatrous icons that evil little creatures, you know, miserable little weak men will create. It's like, I'm miserable and weak, but I can make this beautiful standard that people can get behind, and they will throw the logs of their being on the fire of this great evil that I want to stoke, and they will do it for sake of this standard. Germany, 1939. Wink. As one example, right? There's so much of this throughout history. I kind of found it funny having lived in Russia, including communist Russia, yeah, Leningrad, yeah. I lived in Leningrad, Vladimir, Moscow. The communists forbade icons, but they made their own icons, the hammer and sickle, and countless effigies, because I saw lots of them. The ones of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin with his hand stretched to the future, and all these things that they got people to rally behind, and even after he died. And I've seen his perfectly embalmed. They actually brought in a German master embalmer. They bleached him out with like Clorox, or it's not Clorox, but some sort of bleach or something. He's very white and pasty. And they put him in a glass coffin. I've walked around. You go down Lenin's mausoleum, you look around, and all these Russians look at him. I've been there myself and looked around at the Russians parading around. The whole place is dark, and there's these lights pointing down at his bleached meat suit. It's been bleached and petrified, basically. I don't know all the chemical processes it went through. And there's soldiers at every corner, holding their bang sticks like they're protecting, this corpse, of course. And I see these Russians do this number, and they're looking at it, this religious standard of communist perfection. Actually, the truth behind Lenin is, I think it was World War II? No, it was World War I, excuse me, hello. Sometime in the early 1910s, I think, he went to Germany or somewhere in Eastern Europe, and he was really a hardcore capitalist. That he came back, and then he converted, he got flipped somehow, but he himself was, anyway, that's another story. They make communists forbade icons, and they make lots of their own icons. Lots of effigies and brass statues of Marx, Engels, and Lenin, and the hammer and sickle. And they force people to worship them. No, you weren't allowed, like if you're a government worker, to have any sort of religious icons. Yeah, we can't have that spiritual iconography. What you're going to do is you're going to worship this terrestrial icon, which is always evil. So you're basically worshiping the fire that's going to burn you up, either spiritually, physically, or both together. Which really kind of, we call that irony. Anyway, objective talismans are for enslavement, and subjective ones, i.e. symbols thereof, are meant to be used at a metaphysical standard for liberation. To be self-reflexive, to help you in liberation. So you got to be careful of what icons and standards and talismans you're looking at, because objective ones are for enslavement, and they're used by evil people. This is basically the standard of evil. They're objective talismans. Yeah. Subjective ones are meant to uplift the spirit. The other one is meant to enslave you. This is timeless through the beginning of time. Nobody talks about this stuff. I've never heard anybody talk about it. Collective power, of course, is worldly and temporal power, and always ends in great evil. No different than throwing yourself on the old fireplace there, spiritually, physically, or both. There's a reason why Sannyasin basically means a forest-dwelling spiritual recluse, were forest dwellers. They did not engage in collectivism. There's no such thing as collective wisdom. There's power behind collectivism, but that's no different than saying there's power behind heaping up a bunch of dry logs and setting them, oh my God, it's a giant bonfire and the whole place is heat up, and it's just a huge, like, look at that power. It's like, yeah, but it's self-consuming. You got a lot of, and that's not actual power. It's actually the dissipation of power in a great glorious blaze. But that always confuses, of course, evil and ignorant people, as it always has, and it always will. But anyway, there's a reason why the Sannyasins were forest dwellers. All wisdom and all illumination is personal, is individual. There's no such thing as collective truth or wisdom. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. These are some other evils you'll notice in other people, and I always shun people that ever say, they'll have to say it once, and I will shun them forever. People that will say, who are known to say or have said to me or in my presence, I won't argue with you. What they're really saying is that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to argue with you because I know I would lose. If the truth is the truth, then it remains steadfast the truth. If you're afraid of arguing something, then you are afraid that the position and the idiotic belief system in which you stand is based in lies, nonsense, rubbish, and illogical twaddle. I always shun anybody that says, I won't argue with you. It has to always be translated in the very language that it exists in. What they're saying is that my position is untenable. There's a great word everybody should learn. Untenable. My position is untenable. I just won't hear it because they stick their finger in their ears like a little kid. La 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 la, I'm not going to hear you. They're just like children. Here's the other one I hear. There's like about a half a dozen of these, but these are my two favorite. The first one, I won't argue with you. The second one is, I don't like your tone. I don't like your tone. When someone says that, what they're actually saying is, everything you say is right, logical, and true, but I don't like the way you said it. I'm just trying to shut you up in case I hear more truth, because I can't hear more truth. La 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 la. La la la. Like a child. You know, they tell little Johnny something. That's bad for you, Johnny. You shouldn't eat sugar pops because it's got 1,000,000 grams of sugar in it and it's going to make you diabetic and it's not healthy. La 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 la. I don't want to hear it. It's ancient Chinese saying, huh? There's only 3 things you could hide and occlude for so long, but no longer. The sun, the moon, and the truth. Never forget that. Here's another one I heard recently. You hear one of those things that's 100% true, 100% undeniable, divinely simple, and it is irrefutable by anybody on this earth. Nobody could slander against it. I've not heard it before. I should have. I thought I've heard of them all. Either that or I created them. Here's this one. It says, if you're not working on your dreams, then you're working on someone else's. I got to say that again. Everybody should remember that for the rest of their lives. It's especially true if you're working for somebody else, which I never will again. Even if I end up homeless, I ain't going to do it. If you're not working on your dreams, then you're working on someone else's. Truer words have never been said. I hope this was a brief, nutshell version of the nature of evil. What it is, why it is, and how it operates. It is always self-consuming, and it is always composed of cowards. Cowards. The most roaring fire on earth you put out with a glass of water. Well, I mean, maybe a hose full of water, but they're always cowards, and they're always weak, and they're always self-destructive, and you can either sit back and lick an ice cream cone and watch it self-destroy, or you can take an active part in its being quenched through resistance and wisdom and other means. I hope you like this video. If you ever want to contact me, my information is in the description below. Any donations are always warmly welcome. Or send me an email telling me why you think I'm wrong. I don't like you. I always hated you. I get emails like that once in a while. Happy New Year, as the Russians would say. С Новым годом. They also say увидимся. Ты меня понял? Ясно, как смертный грек. Ясно.